I think Kim really built us up pretty big here, so we have a lot to live up to. But I think the biggest thing from that intro, y'all, and I've said this when I've done other speaking events and they ask me to give them a big bio, is it's not about how cool we are, though I love that, and that's my favorite topic and all. But that said, we just want you to know we've been in the trenches too, and we're not just guys in suits. So we understand some of the stuff we're talking about. It sounds easy, but it's not. It's hard. So.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, to what Darren said, both of us have been in so many different industries and parts of our careers. Like the fact that I came from literally, working in law enforcement to being an engineer to being a CISO. That's not something I ever expected when I came out of college, to be honest. I expected to still be carrying a gun and doing other stuff. So this to us is a dream of where we're at, and we're just hoping to be able to share some knowledge. The topic itself is extremely important to me. It's more of a mission, and it's really the struggle of the U.S. government trying to help commercial with either government-furnished intelligence or programs, which we'll talk about later in the talk, and how we can help bring more of these out, both to industry and to better provide, selfishly, intelligence back to our government to protect the nation. So.
And one thing that's important to add, probably I think a lot of you know me, but those who don't, I do have a background working for the FBI on a cyber squad. Most people find that more impressive than being a CISO for the city. I can tell you that they're both equally challenging. But as we discuss this topic, I will definitely be telling some war stories. And I don't want everyone to be confused, be like, well, he said he's the CISO for the city. Well, I worked on a cyber squad for 8 years for the FBI as well. So.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw a disclaimer out. You see 3 logos up there. I support both Ember River and Viasat, and Darren supports the city. Our opinions up here are our opinions, not those organizations. We may bring things from there, but I just want you to understand we might get a little loose with some of our comments because we do have different opinions, both on how the government shares intelligence as well as how it comes across to commercial. So I just kind of want to throw that little disclaimer out there so nothing goes back at, Viasat or Ember River said something specific. It was Macy. So, all right. With that, I'm going to skip through the agenda. We already had kind of an intro. I threw this slide in here. Darren probably isn't too happy with it because this is what Darren deals with every day. And I'm sure enough of you struggle with the fact that if you're a security leader, it's not just knowing, the network and being able to protect certain things. You drive in privacy. You practically have to be an attorney now. When it goes through it, our jobs suck. They really do. Because we're usually the first one blamed, the first one to have to go find a new job. And we're the one asking for the money to protect everybody from, I always say, cutting themselves with a kitchen knife.
I use the firefighter analogy. I feel like we're a first responder of sorts, but unlike the fire department who gets a lot of support, everyone loves them. If something goes sideways, everyone's like, what do you need? And, oh, you're not to blame for the fire, we'll help you. I feel like folks in our role, how many of you feel this way? It's a little bit different for us, right? If there's a fire, you're at fault for letting that fire start. Who are we going to let go? But we've asked for these resources for years now. So it's definitely different. Now, my friends that are firefighters at the city would probably, I don't want to speak for them actually, but they have a great deal of resources, as do I, and I'm very well supported by the city, and I'm thankful for that. But I'm sure my friends at the fire department would probably say, well, Darren, we could always use more as well. But it's just different environment for us. I don't think I look anything like this dude in the picture. I'm wearing a t-shirt and not a dress shirt, so I don't know what Macy's talking about. And as far as to me, being a good CISO, the most fundamental thing is hiring good people that make me look smart and knowing when to reach out. Macy, your comment about knowing the law, I know some from my bureau days, but I'm smart enough to generally not, and if I answer anything or say anything that sounds like a legal response up here, you guys ignore me. But I'm smart enough to redirect to legal people. And definitely for building a team, I have a fairly technical background, but at this point in the game, I have to let that go. And I need to hire people that are more technical than I am, who are smarter than me, who can really, keep things running well.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, good. All right, so I threw this up here because this is the struggle of every commercial or even I'll call clear defense contractor, because they're technically commercial and DoD at the same time. But the struggle rate here, we had a couple speakers talking about ransomware. We had a couple people talking about the different types of attacks. I mean, you hear over and over, BEC, spear phishing. Those truly still are the biggest issues of getting in. But your bigger issue really is all the devices. And I'll be honest, the nation states, from both the intelligence that I read and just from things that have been occurring, I'll say within the last 6 months, your IoT devices are the first place they're going because they're the easiest thing to compromise and that are not protected.
What does IoT stand for? And I know everyone knows, but
It's on the slide.
there should be it should be IOVT, Internet of Vulnerable Things, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Some of them are regularly updated by the manufacturer, a lot aren't, right? And I have 13,000 in the city. We have about 13,000 employees and then a couple million users who access some of our web resources. But the 13,000 end users, that's a very, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a fraction of what we have when you take all the IoT devices and pile those on as well.
Yeah, and you got to understand, my life, I work in clear defense spaces. So both my clients and my company. And I'll be honest, a lot of these things sit in the kitchens in our offices, which means those devices also could be connected to a network, the same as, and people talk, we'll go old school, shut the Wi-Fi off on your printer, all that kind of stuff. Does anybody think about the toaster, even the vending machine that is set up to go out to know when it's empty to the vendor that you've already run through, I'm sure, your supply chain? I mean, you just start looking at all those different things. And like I said, I work in buildings where it's U.S. personnel only. Like, it's not escort for non-U.S. personnel, it's U.S. personnel only. So, yet, these things are plugged in everywhere.
And hackers are creative, as we know.
They take the easy route.
They take the easy route, but they're also creative. And I loved, it was about probably 10 years ago, right, when somehow they discovered that printers now have hard drives and storage, and they cache the documents that have been sent to them. So then they started buying printers that had been sold as used, or we'll gladly take your old printers for you. Yeah. And they started harvesting information, and there was tons of sensitive data on those printers.
Again, easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So just before we go on to the next thing, from my perspective, what is one of the biggest struggles? Well, aside from the craziness of IoT and this thing called remote work, how many of you love remote work? Me too, honestly. How many of you love defending remote work? I dare you. Come on, I want to see it. In spite of all of that crazy and zero trust, have you guys, a few of you have heard me speak over the years, but I have a Tarzan story. Has anyone here heard it? If you have, too bad, you're going to hear it again, I guess. But, one of the biggest problems I see is, it reminds me of a story. When I was a kid, I used to watch Tarzan, the show, okay? And I'm dating myself, but whatever. And in one episode, Tarzan and his wife, Jane, or whatever she is, Jane, are cruising through the forest together. And they're enjoying it, and they're talking, and all of a sudden Tarzan stops in his intense view, and he's like, wait. And Jane's like, what's the matter, honey? It's a gorgeous day. We really love it out here. Look how pretty it is. It's nice and quiet. We're enjoying a walk. Why are you acting so freaked out? And I think I heard, what was that? Oh, I thought I heard someone guess. But what is wrong with that scenario? It's quiet. They're in the forest, in the jungle. What should be happening? You should hear birds tweeting, and that's exactly what Tarzan said. He goes, it shouldn't be quiet. We're in the jungle. And sure enough, there was a predator, right? A lion, or I don't remember what it was exactly, that was following them, and it was scaring the other animals into going, hey, we're not going to say anything. Well, one statement I love to tell my team, I love to tell future executives, I love to tell our own group, and I know it's obvious to you, but it's something we have to reiterate, is if your people aren't bringing you problems and aren't saying that they're seeing a lot going on, we're in a jungle. There should be stuff going on.
Yeah.
And you should be seeing it. And if they're not seeing it, either get another team or better yet, work with them and help them learn how to identify those things, right? And then at your level, I would say that you also want to make darn sure that they are reporting on that, so they're not just pushing it to the side saying, oh, the CISO doesn't really need to worry about this. I get weekly reports on that.
Yeah, and understand we are up here to talk about those struggles that the government and commercial have, but setting a stage I think is really important. And going through what, I love, so Darren and I also teach together at Point Loma Nazarene University.
I see too much of Macy.
Yeah, and he's told our students that multiple times.
No.
Maybe in the same semester. No, just kidding. But it's important because when you look at, understanding what's going on in your network and having, if things are too quiet, so I'm going to step back a little bit, and it's a pet peeve. I have a lot of peers that tell me that, well, I don't need the government furnished indicators, or I don't need this, I don't need that, because I'm not a target of a nation state. When we get to story time later, we depend on how quick we go, we may not be able to get through too many of them, but Darren and I can talk about either cases that we're allowed to, or different attacks where they were non-government or critical infrastructure organizations that were targeted so that they could utilize them to get into somebody else. Or when you talk about, and I'm probably going to now, the next slide is actually a short video from the current director of the Bureau. When you listen to this, they have, and I'll pick on China specifically just because China and Russia are two of my areas of expertise, but China specifically has a 5-year plan. Most of it is not defense stuff. It's all commercial, all the way down to, what is the recent recipe for creating the next seed for corn production. And they're not breaking into stuff. Some of it, they're sending human people over to just literally walk out into a field of, some farmer and steal the corn and put it in their bag and fly home and then analyze it. So when you think about whether or not I am a target and any of the government intelligence can help, I got to tell you, I don't care what you're selling. I don't care what service you're providing. Every single one of you need it. So, all right.
I haven't told a FBI story yet, right?
No, and you can't yet.
All right.
So let me actually move to this, and I'm going to play this just for a second. You may have already seen this on 60 Minutes, but I really think it's worth it.
The biggest threat we face as a country from a counterintelligence perspective is from the People's Republic of China, and especially the Chinese Communist Party. No country presents a broader, more severe threat to our ideas, our innovation, our economic security than China. And they are targeting our innovation, our trade secrets, our intellectual property on a scale that's unprecedented in history. They have a bigger hacking program than that of every other major nation combined. They have stolen more of Americans' personal and corporate data than every nation combined.
What is the FBI doing about that?
So the FBI is keenly focused on the China counterintelligence threat. We are now moving at a pace where we're opening a new China counterintelligence investigation about every 12 hours.
Okay, so I'm not going to switch slides yet because I think this is important. We talk about indicators that you can use in your network to find out if someone's already in there, if they're sleeping, if that your commercial tools aren't going to pick up. He talked about the threats with China, but he also talked about counterintelligence, which 99% of you have no need to worry about something like that. The US government does. And when they use that counterintelligence, that's those people that I spoke about where they're walking in, they're taking a flight over, they're coming across the border, and they're just traveling to go to Legoland or to Disneyland. And this is how these operatives work. And while they're here, and again, I'm picking on San Diego because that's where we're all at right now, but they're going in to collect this data or find individuals that will collect it for them. So again, as I go through this, and we especially, we'll talk about one big complaint that commercial has. And again, I've sat on both sides, so I can complain and then I can explain why. The biggest complaint that the commercial side has is, well, great, you told me I have somebody in my network, but you can't give me any information to go pull them out or find them or anything else. And that's where, as we get further along, I can at least explain some of the different collection processes and things like that, or why that data can't be shared or why it's classified. And it's also some of the reasons why the agencies struggle even sharing it with each other. So, all right, let me...
And definitely, I can share with you guys, there's things that the Bureau is doing. I mean, I helped start one of them. It's called Detect and Deter.
Yeah.
That
D&D.
allows them to collect data to help see if some of those classified indicators are on your network in a way that it doesn't compromise the actual investigations that are going on with them. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was working for the Bureau, I worked at the Supercomputer Center previously, and it was frustrating to me that they weren't giving me all of the data. And I think for them it's frustrating, at least when I was there, that they can't give you all the data. But it's also frustrating that when they do give out the data, guess what happens sometimes? It gets leaked. Well, now our friends, and I use the term very loosely, over in China,
Sorry.
know, hey, the U.S. has identified these hot points that we're using.
Stop
so
using them.
Stop using them, or intentionally mess with those and have them give bogus data. So it is a balancing game. I mean, how bad is this threat? I hope most of you have seen this, but if I almost said China, if cyber crime was its own economy, have you guys read this? It'd be the third largest in the world. 6 trillion GDP with a T. That would make a big dent in our own debt, right? I mean, and I love to tell the hellfire and brimstone, but it's more important that we talk about the solutions. But that's a lot of hellfire and brimstone. And when you think about it, the entire drug trade worldwide isn't as much as
The
cyber. So we wonder why it's so motivating for the criminal side, but then also for the nation state, it's hard to even calculate that. And again, I love telling my Bureau stories, sorry, but it's a great place to work. I loved being there. But, I can remember when I was there that there was a news article about some F-18 technology that had cost us taxpayers billions and billions of dollars and decades to develop. And China managed to get into a system and the data was exposed and it took them minutes. And suddenly now they've gone from 20 years behind us and billions of dollars to maybe not quite on par, because from what I've been told they couldn't quite construct it the same, which is good news. But that kind of thing as a taxpayer and as an American and as a cyber guy, it's very frustrating. And I think we can do a lot better than we're doing. And I think part of that is going to be the sharing side that Macy's talking about. Part of it is, we're going to talk about some other things here, but part of that is also just knowing who to ask and having relationships. I don't think we're going to win this battle with just technology. I'm trying not to talk too far ahead of some of the other topics, but yeah, so go ahead, Macy.
We can skip slides if we need to. So I have to highlight, because the big thing about today while we're here is, one, to kind of explain through some of those struggles, because that was the big thing. Some of the programs that are out there that are available. The D&D that Darren talked about, I used it at a previous defense contractor that I went into. I was their first CISO. They just acquired, I think it was 7 or 8 smaller CDCs.
Cleared defense you guys know this stuff. Sorry, I forget my audience lines.
And when I came in, they were a mess. Literally the first year, we had 27 different nation-state actors that we had cleaned out of the network. And actually, I felt like Darren practically moved in and I didn't have to pay him because he was always there. But with that program alone, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did. Because it was literally, we were feeding information to them that they would run through stuff. Again, we had clearances, we had a SCIF, we did get some good stuff, but there were things they couldn't tell us because of the classification level and other things. But it was that early warning. It was the ability that, the specific APT had been on our network for 9 months. And we did drones, targets. We did not do that plane, but we did help with other planes, ballistic missile parts. I mean, you name it, our divisions did all kinds of armored vehicles. So we were a big target. But honestly, and I'll go back to it again, it's not, you'll see on some later slides, the big focus isn't all on defense. I mean, don't get me wrong, they do want that stuff. But it's not the big focus. So.
And to Macy's point, I mean, for me, when I went over to the Bureau from the Supercomputer Center, I was real excited. I worked there 8 years. Everyone always asks, well, why'd you leave the Bureau? I had some good opportunities there. I also had an opportunity to make some significant change at the city, and I took it. I love the Bureau. I have nothing but ultimate respect for them.
I'd work there too if they paid me enough. Sorry.
Anyway, but when I started there, I mean, we would go out to an organization and tell them, well, we believe that a bad actor is in here. How do you know this? Well, some other site that we were helping, we saw the bad actor there. We saw communications from your commercial or defense contractor, CDC, to that site. That's usually a pretty strong indicator that the same actor's in both places. And they'd say, great, can you help us? And we would tell them the basic information. But then they'd say, okay, we found some, can you tell us more and more and more? And at a point it got to where we're like, well, we can't tell you every indicator we have for this specific group, or in Macy's case, a whole bunch of groups. And I was thinking, well, what can we do? And then there's the whole side, I mean, first thing people always ask is, are we gonna tell the media? And if any of my friends from the Bureau are here, I don't think they are, but Drew from the Law Enforcement Coordination Center is here, and Drew, tell me if I'm misspeaking, but that's the last thing they want to do.
No, you become a number.
So
the reports become a number.
Yeah, and that would be the first question people ask, for good reason. I understand stock matters, I understand public, perspective matters. And then the second question was always, well, give us more, and how can we identify what other things that are going on without giving you all of our data, without giving you access to everything. And frankly, there wasn't a great answer. What I came up with, and it wasn't ingenious by any means, was taking the idea of, hey, can we just capture your DNS traffic? Just a user on your network requested a website, or something on your network requested it. And it came back, here's the domain it requested, Google, and here's the IP that was returned. And they said, well, yeah, we can do that. And they said, well, wait, you might know who, and I'm all, we won't know who made the request. So there's not really sensitivity there. There's no PII. And by them doing a day or two's dump of that data for us, then we could take that and we would get it on DVD or external hard drive. But it was a way for us to look through all the indicators and say, hey, we found some other things without having to give up the whole list. Yeah. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Was it useful? Very. And I think Macy's going to talk where there's a commercialized thing that's doing similar but way more broad and a lot easier. But I encourage you to talk to Drew up front. Raise your hand, Drew. You're hating me now, I know. He can help put you in contact with my friends at the Bureau, and they can look at that. But I think we need to be creative with more things like that.
Yeah, and if you need connections to any of the CY2 or CY1, the cyber squads at the Bureau, ask Darren and I. We can connect you with either Nick or Pete or somebody that can come out and talk to you, okay? It's always good to have that number now and not when you actually need it. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been in a meeting, someone is calling and texting frantically, can you connect me with somebody? And then you have to step out and try to, get them connected. So, all right, I'm going to move us along, and I'm going to actually go through a couple of these kind of quick. So again, this is me just being a pain, because like I said, it drives me crazy when my peers say that I'm not at risk, or I'm not a target, or I make toys or something like that, and I'm not going to. Again, it depends on what they're trying to do. They're trying to build their economy, and I don't even hold it against them. In their
I do.
in their culture, taking it is okay. It's not a bad thing. So when I look at that, as much as it drives me crazy and we're fighting against it, they're doing what they need to do. What I want to do is stop them, or at least, let me be blunt on this one. You're never going to stop them, no matter what we give you, what people you hire, or anything else. You just want to know when they're in there, so you can move them out. Okay. This is where Darren and I kind of differ a little bit. Because even in the government, I have agencies that will literally say, yeah, I don't want to share with them because they're not going to do anything with it. Or I have a specific one where I get intelligence from somebody and I want to get it from another agency. And when I look at the intelligence here and what's supposed to be shared in a loop, there's a lot missing. So I do have a little bit of a struggle with the way that things happen internally within agencies, but again, we can discuss that in a little bit.
No, I mean, I agree with you, Mace. I think no one is a very strong statement, and I know my friends from the Law Enforcement Coordination Center and just the intel community in general would disagree that they're trying, and that's one thing I'm really happy to see, but certainly that's something we need to continue to work on.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is going to sound weird, but you all need to be more assertive about asking for that information and knowing people like Drew, and Drew can guide you to the right people. He's loving me right now.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I mean, that's super important. Macy nailed it with the relationship thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a big part of our job is relationships. We have our technical people who are down in the trenches, but for us, it's knowing the right people to make sure that we understand what the current threats are and who we can reach out to when we see something that is kind of out of the box for us.
Yeah. I'm going to shoot through a couple of the slides just because some of these are just fact things. This one actually I got from one of my bureau friends. Actually utilized this one in a talk, and I selfishly borrowed it. But if you notice, again, yes, BEC and ransomware and spear phishing really is at the top, but it's not what I worry about. It really is the espionage and theft of trade secrets that they are all after. And that's where the intelligence that you can get from the government can help you. So,
How many of you guys, well, you probably don't want to raise your hands, but another really good resource is the counterintelligence folks from the Bureau. They come out and they will give a really good briefing that's not so much on the technical side, but I can tell you I investigated multiple cases where sometimes it was an unknowing executive, sometimes it was an engineer that was about to leave a company, or sometimes it was one working at the company, and they were actively recruited by someone that they weren't completely sure was an adversary from China, but where they were very creative, saying, hey, we'd like to pay you for some side work. Hey, we'd like to learn how you do this. And some of those communications, it was kind of sad for me to watch some of these, because they slowly dragged the person into giving more and more information until that person made choices that at first they were kind of, maybe not violating anything. But over time they got them to go over that edge, and then once they did, then they kind of took real advantage of them. And people lost jobs, and we lost important data that way. And does it happen here in our region? Absolutely.
all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, going back to that counterintelligence side, people, they are highly targeted when they do this. And the person never really, at times, to Darren's point, until it's too late and they have leverage, it's too late. I'll go back out, and I know I'm speaking to the choir, but your social media, everything else, if the fact that they find out that that you're having trouble with your spouse, or all these different things, they use every single one of those things against you. or, and I guarantee, I already know that, like, all of my stuff, forget the government breaches of all of our background checks and all that other stuff, but it's not hard to figure out that, who people know and everything else. You also can't, be a ghost. I mean, you could, but that's a different agency. I threw this one up because, again, I wanted to highlight, I didn't circle anything that was really government. I tried to circle things that were around here, or it really, when I heard the counterintelligence brief, when they were talking about the seed innovation, that just blew my mind that they not only breached the company, but they sent someone over to literally walk out rent a car, middle of the cornfields, walk out, pick up some seeds, stick them in a Ziploc baggie, go back and get on a plane to go home. I mean, you can't protect against that either. But having the ability to actually understand that you could be a target and thinking that way, I think is extremely important. So.
And the thing I like to add with this kind of slide is that, I think all of us need to be aware they're opportunistic too. They have a very detailed plan, but I think, Macy, we were talking beforehand, right? Bank robbers have a plan too of a bank. And this is very simplified. But you know what? If they're on the way to rob the bank and they're all already dressed up and they have their guns and they see a Brinks truck pulled over with no one in it and the back door open, guess what? They're going to take it. They also, if they see a car that's running with no one in it, they may use that as an opportunity to jump in, use that stolen car to do the crime. And the same is true for all of us. Even if you're a smaller business or something that you feel like a university where they're like, well, we don't have anything classified, though universities nowadays have a lot of tech. But for some, if you think you're less targeted, they're opportunistic. Yes, they have a very detailed targeted plan, but they also need people to hack from in order to get to these guys. Yeah. They also will again, they'll take whatever's available. I saw it in my days. I saw them run scans against an IP range and think they were targeting a large defense contractor, and they were actually targeting something else that's much smaller. It was kind of embarrassing what they were targeting. But then what's funny is once they realized that, they didn't pack up and leave. They put their little footprints all over the place in there, so they had ways to do further scanning and further, work from there. So it's, I hope I'm not too good at the hellfire and brimstone, but
No,
everyone really is the target.
All right, so next slide. This is just me. Maybe. It's not moving. Oh, all right. Now that we had to drop the mic. There. I put this in every one of my board reports and every single one of my ELT reports when I have to go talk to my leadership. This is where I go, why me? And when it comes down to it, we don't choose whether or not we get breached. We don't choose whether or not we have no budget. We choose a mission and we choose a job, and most times we choose our teams. It's just, I can't stand it when people come and again, I sound cynical because I keep saying this. I'm complaining about my peers, so I apologize for all of them out there. But when someone says, literally, why me? Why did this happen? I shouldn't be a target. I shouldn't be this. Again, it's not you. They're just going after what they literally, when we talk about that 5-year plan, I just want to make sure this still works. Yeah, nope. It's not working.
Battery died. Technology is hard. Do you want me to flip the slides for you, Mason?
Nope, I'm good. When it comes down to it, we really have to focus on what we can do, and anything you can use to get ahead. These actors, whether it's criminal or it's a nation state, they don't have to go through and run at the same amount of effort we do. I know there's an attack or a case where on an average, the actor group is hiring close to 300 people a day because they're making that much money a day. And this is just within the last 6 months. Sorry, I'm trying to clouded a little. But let's jump into the struggles. You heard me. Oops, sorry, forgot I had a mic on. You heard me kind of complain about some of the struggles that they have. Let me take it from the aspect of I'm a commercial CISO, and we'll walk through what Darren said. They come, they knock on the door, they tell you you've got some issue. Go search for this DNS beaconing out. That's usually the.
It was the MO.
Yeah.
Now they're very clever and they use all kinds of legitimate services
Well,
too.
yeah, and they tunnel.
like chat and other things. So it's a lot more challenging. But yeah.
But going through, it's sometimes, especially if you're a commercial entity, you're not getting a lot of information. Okay, I want to explain why. When we go back to how they get government furnished indicators, whether it's FUO, which means U.S. people or entity only is allowed to see this data, or going up to a TS/SCI or even higher tickets. It is all classified by whoever found it, okay? So that's the first thing. So if I'm NSA and I find data and Darren is the bureau, Darren can't choose to share something I classified at a certain level. It has to come back to the data owner. This is no different than data classification within your commercial entities.
Now in
okay?
theory, we all use the same classification standard.
But
the other issue is even if the document, it's classified to the highest level of the content, not to all the content. So if Macy
Yes.
saw something and he's working for another intel agency and I had marked this sheet secret and he saw something that's clearly unclassified in his mind, he can't just release that. He still has to go back. And I mean, that's for good reason too, though, because something that may seem unclassified, and it may be clear as day it's unclassified, but then when he calls me back and I start giving him the full picture, he goes, oh, yeah, if they knew that, they could surmise other things.
and secret stuff usually isn't any good anyway. But going back to just looking at that, it also goes back to how it was collected, because if Drew was my asset and he was in Europe somewhere and he collected data for me, and that's the data that I have in that report that I've identified that there's something on your network, if that gets released and the only way I could have gotten that data was from Drew, I now put him in danger and his family and everything else. So people don't understand that it's not just an IP address or a domain or this or that. They're classified for a reason. So that's just something that I wanted to. Anything else on some of the? I'm watching the time. And
My story always comes back to a couple things, which is number one, hire good people. Number two, have good relationships out there, and you want to do everything you can to stack the deck in your favor. It's what we love about cyber, at least for me, is what I also hate about it. I love that it's challenging and changing and dynamic, and I don't know if love is the right word. I don't want to be quoted saying this, but I like that the adversaries come up with new things. Why? Because it gives us,
it's innovation.
we get to learn new ways to protect. But it's also what I hate about my job, right?
Also, sorry,
No, it's
I
all
just
good.
need to move
Keep
this
rolling.
along.
I want to get these guys time to speak.
That's
or
what I was
ask
just going to
questions.
say. Every one of these agencies up here have small little information sharing programs. The problem with that is they have very few. They have very few engineers or analysts to support them. And I hate to say it, you have to be that special person in the room that they want to protect, okay? They all have them though. But like without saying which one, there's one up there that they literally only have 6 boxes out there monitoring. That's it, across the entire nation. So.
And I have mixed views on that. Macy and I talked about this
Yeah.
beforehand. I think that the Intel community does a lot of really excellent work.
They do.
And they've gotten really pretty darn good about sharing amongst each other and about coming up with novel ways to share. And they're a lot more open to things like I came up with back, whatever it was, 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
The D&D.
The D&D stuff. But I mean, it's just hard.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think the really simple lesson out of that is, again, get to know Drew, who will make sure that you get to know the right people. Drew didn't have any idea we were going to start picking on him.
He
but
just happens to be in
buddy.
our eye view, and we happen to know he can help. These you may already get through InfraGard or something else. These are a good start, but if these are released, these are completely unclassified, and most likely they're They're decent to look for. I'll put it there. It's just like, open source. But when it comes down to it, I'm still a little bit focused more on something that I can't get out there from normal information sharing stuff. So here's...
Can I start on this slide?
Yeah,
I
go
love
ahead.
this slide because I think there's vendors in here. There's obviously a lot of executives in the cyber world here. There's a couple points. First of all, if any one vendor tells you that they can fix everything and completely protect you, I love that some people are giggling at that. Might be vendors that are wanting to shoot me right now. But there's a lot that'll tell you that. Maybe if you're a really small organization, maybe. My experience has been that you need a diverse suite of tools to really have the best in class of each. And if someone's telling you they can do it all for you, you really want to take a really hard look and say, really? And not just that, but again, network with your peers. Ask them what their thoughts are. Go out and compare the products. I think the vendors that I know, the good ones, have what I call the REI strategy, right? Which is they don't want to just sell you a product. They want you to like the product so that you are happy and you brag on it to other people. They want to make sure you're using it properly. There are vendors out there who
They invest in you.
Yes, there are vendors out there who do the latter, where they just sell you a product and licenses, and then they wipe their hands.
Peace out, see you in a year for the renewal.
And I can tell you, I went to work for a large organization, and when I first started, I said, well, what do we have a lot of security tools. Yeah. Well, what are we getting for reports from these? What are we seeing? Well, who reviews these daily?
That's an issue.
And I got crickets, and I was like, well, I'm going to assign a couple people to each of these tools, and then I want a weekly report, and if there's anything urgent, I want a daily. And I think those are all critical things. And again, my REI analogy to me is so right on, because you go to buy a backpack at REI, they're not there to sell you just a backpack. And you do pay a little more for REI products, in my opinion, a little, like 1 to 2. But guess what? They help fit it. You go out, if you're not happy and you come back, they refit or give you another, or tell you to get a different one. And I respect that. Even if the profit isn't the most for them on that, they know that if I'm happy and I go hiking and I come back and I've had a good time, then I'm going to use them again.
Yeah.
And I think I love going on my vendor rant. I apologize. But it's super important. Make sure you guys talk to the vendors here and to the ones that you have.
Yep. I'm going to run us through because I'm going to cut us off in about 2 minutes.
Good call.
Sorry.
Don't ever get me to stop otherwise.
Yeah, I know. And if there's questions later and everything else, I selfishly, and I apologize for any of the vendors in the room, these are people I've written very large checks for as a CISO, so that's the only reason why I put it up there. And some of them for multiple millions of dollars just for a year, so unfortunately. So these are some other sharing groups. I put this up here, selfishly, all the different ISACs. If you look, there's almost an ISAC for everything. Look and at the minimum Google and find one in your industry or call me, just something. These are, again, groups in which you can share and get information. They can also, depending, like I'll speak for, because I used to run one of the 7 teams at Amex. The FFISAC, the financial one, they do have classified government information sharing stuff. And both the U.S. Federal Reserve and the government help them a lot, and they need it. And I'm happy that they do that. But again, these are areas in which I just wanted to put up to drop that. And I'm going to go a little bit quick, Darren. Sorry,
We covered most of these, I think, already, Mace.
So again, this is more focused on government-furnished indicators and sharing it with industry. And I'm going to actually skip through this one real quick. Whoops, sorry. I'm going to leave it on this one for a second. So this is one that DHS does, and selfishly with Viasat. They actually, because Viasat is both an ISP and a cleared defense contractor, they build a lot of, I'll call it boxes and widgets for the government and the military that are hardened crypto boxes, type 1 crypto. They also build the communication stuff for like a SIPR and NIPR where you have the cards in your SCIFs to talk. So they know how to secure stuff. NSA has an approved box in which between them, Viasat, and DHS provides classified indicators or GFI, government furnished indicators. And they can actually put that in that box, and they are actually approved to be able to put that on a commercial network. Now, the reason why is because you can't get to anything in it. It's a service. So you purchase the service, and the box goes there, and it's just a span port and runs through. But what it does is it gives you the ability to fire on those classified indicators and share at least that as an early warning signal. So you can go check their website. I'm not here to pitch that, but this is an example of what you can get. Those agencies where I said you could, where they have, like, one of them has 6 devices they put out there, you can get it free from them. But the difference is you have to be the one they want to take to the dance. This one is something where you can go out and it's just a service to at least give you that early warning. That is nothing, it doesn't replace anything either, just so you know. It's just that extra view. So let me, this is important. We're talking really, and I'm gonna let Darren talk about this, but you literally only have a minute. We're putting different programs in front of you to write down and to go look at. If anything you take from today, go choose something so that you can better share and get more information to help you out, okay?
If you're local and you're a CISO, I think Macy started a group called the CISO Roundtable. Sorry, Macy, you're going to get deluged, but
That's
maybe.
right.
But if you're not on that, you should request, and then the board reviews applicants, and it's only, no vendors are allowed.
Nope.
It's a safe place. Even if you are a vendor, you can't sell your wares there. It's one of those good groups. Another resource that I am working on, that's why, again, it's all about me, no, I'm just kidding, but is, 3 years ago when I was with the city, I found out there were some grant funds coming up with the Department of Homeland Security that were potentially available. And I said, it'd be great for the region to have a cyber lab. LA has one. We want us to do it better, of course. But, I would like us to have physical space where any of the organizations that are state and local or academia can come in, share information with each other. They can communicate, they can collaborate, they can educate each other and share knowledge. So it's come to be finally.
Yeah, it's legit lab.
It's up and running. We have a ton of networking tools and hardware and systems and security tools. We also have a virtual, what I call the free range. It's an open source range, cyber range, where you can go in and you can do attack defense scenarios. Yes, you have to come in and work with my team to get permission to check that area out and utilize it. But it's a great place to test, and if someone tells you their product's good, come on in and we'll help you get it stood up in that area, and you can have people bang on it. There's a whole lot going on, and I just encourage you guys, check out the website. I believe it's on the next slide.
It's there on the...
Or hit me up. I'm D. Bennett.
Your stuff's on the end.
Is it? All right, perfect. Then yeah, just hit me up. But I won't go too crazy with this one. It's just a really good thing. And just final thing I want to say is there's 2 groups that are steering this project. The city started it. Great. I had the idea, and my team has done a great job. I want it to be community driven. I don't want it to be Darren's project or the city's. So we have 2 groups, an executive team and a technical team, and they equally are going to determine where this goes from here on, so that we know what you guys want and that it's completely molded around that.
So I am, and you're going to shoot me, we are not getting to story time because I'm looking at the clock and I want to give questions. Yeah, but later at the happy hour time, if Darren's still here, and well, I will be here, we can talk about some of these stories and everything. I will give a quick shout out to Darren because everybody should know about the Alpha Bay market, and he was part of a team that actually helped take them down. And that is huge kudos because that was a legit attack.
It was at the time, I think it might still be the largest dark web online place where they sell people and arms and others. But you know what? I was a very small part in that, and I was very privileged to be included, and it just helped me. Even in the Bureau, it never ceases to amaze me how much money there is in cybercrime.
Yeah.
And how important it is that we stop it.
Yeah.
Thank you, though, Mason.
No, you're good. So again, I put this up. I probably listed way too many things, but these are just groups that I belong to, and that I can't tell you, like, you need to be part of something. I mean, just being able to share information. Darren mentioned the San Diego CISA Roundtable. That started with 8 people. 3 of us were dealing with the same nation-state actor, and it looked like a drug deal. Every week we met in a Starbucks parking lot, sat in one car, and we're sharing intel because our general counsels wouldn't let us. And that's now at 120 plus members. And to Darren's point, no vendors allowed. Even if you're went to the vendor side, if you get caught talking about your product or anything else in our meetings, you're banned. And it's not just you're banned from there. Every CISO in that group knows that you don't come in their front door anymore. So it's legit, and we have no dues. So that's it. That's our information. If you want to reach out to us, just take a picture. So I know we're right there. Can we give him a couple questions? Okay. Till Kim pulls us off the stage. She's not in here.
Everyone got to eat, which
I don't
is always
think.
good too.
So when you had the slide up with the red circles around the
Yes.
things, I was surprised that there wasn't a red circle around the smart grid, because I had heard that that was a target.
So everything on that page was a target. What I was trying to point out is everybody always worries about whether or not it's critical infrastructure or DoD. They think that's what everybody, and that's getting back to my somewhat selfish frustration is those are things that people always think is an issue, and if I'm not in that box, I'm good. That's why I was trying to circle things that people would automatically go, well, I'm not a defense contractor or I'm not critical infrastructure. They are targets. I mean, think about the, what was it, SDG&E, I'm gonna date myself, it was maybe 10, 12 years ago, the person that was in Arizona changed something, like it was a fuse or something, dropped all of I've never been more ticked in my life. My company was doing a data center migration at the time. And literally, I didn't go home for 2 days. And I wasn't even the person that could do any of this. I was just buying pizza and making sure my team was good and talking to the leadership and everything else. So those are the things that people expect. I wanted to circle things that people didn't.
And this is Darren talking, not the city, not the FBI, but we all know that critical infrastructure is hard to secure. A lot of the technology is older. We know that we air gap it and do a whole lot of things to protect it.
It's not air gapped.
Not always, no.
Too much.
It's definitely a challenge, and the grid is too. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an area we need to look at. Is China really after the smart grid? Maybe not as much, in my opinion. And again, I'm
They want the
talking for
technology.
Darren. But is there other countries that would love, and they don't care about the consequences of taking down plants or bombing things? Yes. And those are the ones that scared me the most.
Yeah.
Back when I was at the Bureau,
Yeah.
and today too, so.
Any other?
Great question.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
This is out of curiosity about the F-18 data breach, I guess. Was that an internal job? Because you're talking about the SIPR, NIPR
I'll let you
networks
answer
and
that
class, unclass. So how did that happen if it wasn't internal? Just a question.
My understanding, and first of all, anything I talk on, if it hasn't already been in the media, I'm probably not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
With regard to the Bureau. Sorry, you're not going to hear about the invisible cloak that we really have, and I'm kidding, I think. But no, to answer your question, my understanding is that, that was one of the events that helped lead up to us as a country changing the way that we handle unclassified data, because if you have enough unclassified data and they put it all in one place together, you can make something that's pretty sensitive. And a lot of that was unclassified data, but very sensitive. It was on a normal network that may have had a firewall to the internet, but had internet connectivity. And from what I remember, it was
wasn't all
something
in one
along those
place
lines.
either.
Now, there was classified data like, crypto keys and fancy special stuff that was off that they didn't get, is my understanding. And again, if I knew every detail in the case, I wouldn't be able to probably talk to it. But yeah, your observation's right. I don't believe that one was an inside job, though, no.
No, that was the one with the ejection seats? Did they go?
I think that's separate, actually.
Okay, never mind. Any other questions?
Going once.
Oh, that's easy. Everybody just wants to get out.
I don't blame you. Thank you
Okay.
all very much.
Thank you.